CIA Director Gina Haspel has just finished briefing a small group of senators behind closed doors about the CIA's assessment that the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman likely did order the death of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Senators in both parties were furious last week when the CIA leader ignored their demand to brief them on the murder evidence. The White House sent the Secretaries of State and Defense instead, who both denied that there was any proof linking Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince to the gruesome killing. A misleading statement by most experts. Joining me now, Senator Bob Menendez, the top Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, who has just come out of that Haspel briefing. Senator, I know you can't discuss intelligence, so I'm not going to ask you that, but are you now more persuaded than you were before going in that steps have to be taken against the Saudis?
Andrea, before this briefing, I was convinced that we had to take steps on the war in Yemen, and I believe we had to take steps on the Saudis. And I am only solidified in that view after this briefing, and it is my hope that the Senate will act and send a strong and unequivocal message that such actions in both cases cannot stand. I hope that my legislation with Senator Graham, I believe, is the appropriate response. The Saudi Arabia Accountability in Yemen Act that would create a mandatory global Magnitsky for violations of human rights, and also sanctions on those who are continuing to deny humanitarian relief into Yemen and those who would support the Houthis. Those are some examples of a really strong response I think undoubtedly needs to take place.
Let me ask you about some things that both Secretaries Pompeo and Mattis said last week when they came out of the briefing to all of the senators. Secretary Pompeo said that there was no direct connection, no evidence linking them. I'm paraphrasing now, but Secretary Mattis said there was no smoking gun. That seemed to indicate that they were trying to dissuade the public from believing that the CIA assessment was as has been reported. It seemed to be an artful kind of spin, because the CIA never has, quote, a smoking gun or direct evidence. That's not what they do. Do I have that right?
Well, let me just say that what both Secretary Pompeo and Mattis did was, I think, a disservice to the Senate. I understand what they're driving at. They're trying to preserve a relationship with Saudi Arabia, a relationship that I think will be preserved regardless, because there's critical needs of Saudi Arabia as it relates to U.S. defense of the kingdom and in our mutual interest in the region. So that should not have us ultimately not act decisively and forcefully, particularly in the death of Jamal Khashoggi, a United States permanent resident, a journalist, because otherwise not only will it send the wrong message to the Crown Prince, but it will also send a global message that you can act with impunity and ultimately have no consequence. That is a dangerous message for the United States to send.
Now, there are reports that just now Senator Corker said that there's no question whatever that he, the Crown Prince, murdered him, Khashoggi. Is that your takeaway also?
Well, that was my view before this briefing, and it is certainly my view now.
And there's also a quotation here from Lindsey Graham, from our colleagues over across the way at the Hill. I went into the briefing believing that it was next to impossible that this was carried without the Crown Prince's knowledge, and I left the briefing with the same opinion. So you agree with that as well?
I do.
Are you satisfied with the CIA's efforts in all of this? There are reports that there were intercepts implicating the Crown Prince in advanced knowledge of and direction to Qahtani, his close aide.
Well, I can't speak to that. I'll just simply say that I believe that the briefing that the chairs and ranking members of the National Security Committee got should be a briefing that every senator should get. I argued for that before this. I still believe every senator should get it. I think it will be crystal clear in their mind about what happened here. As it relates to the CIA's role, both before and after, that's something that we're going to be continuing to look at.
And is the CIA doing a good job on this?
Let me just say that as it relates to the briefing, I was satisfied with the briefing. I thought it was an honest briefing. As it relates to your broader question, that's still an open question for me.
Senator Menendez, thank you very much. The